I'm gonna walk you through the best method for developing mass in athletes. Let's get into it. Yo, what's going on guys? Chris Barn here with Overtime Athletes. And for today's video, what I wanna be able to address is a common question that I get, and that's how to develop mass in athletes. Now, when it comes to developing mass in athletes, we have to put it in context. Usually, the opportunity I have to be able to develop mass in athletes is over a single off season or multiple, but basically I have a time constraint where I have anywhere from 3 to 5 months to be able to develop that mass, because once that athlete gets in season, we usually can't apply that same amount of stimulus and stress to the athlete without burning them out. The other factor is that we don't want to sacrifice the athlete's speed, agility, quickness, and power, all the things that are going to make them the athlete on the field that they are. So there's a delicate balance there when it comes to actually programming the athlete. If it was just to, blow up an individual, obviously there's many ways to skin a cat. If you look at bodybuilding, they perform a great deal of single joint, isolated movements where they're really focused on the hypertrophy stimulus. But we have to consider all these modalities when it comes to the athlete. This is also goes without saying that you have your nutrition in check, you're in a caloric surplus, your sleep, your recovery's dialed in, your hydration's dialed in, so that you could perform at the highest level that you can each training session. So all those factors are checked. Now, the simple answer to this is we combine German volume training for our hypertrophy stimulus, and we perform a simple progressive overload such as 5-3-1 for developing our absolute strength. And the way that we combine those is really that secret sauce. So let's get a little bit deeper into it. What we usually perform is 4 days a week training session. We usually perform these for 3 to 4 weeks, and then we deload to be able to recover the muscle tissue and the nervous system on that final week, and then come back to our next training block. But within that training week, we perform 2 days upper body focus and 2 days lower body focus. 2 of those days are gonna be focused on absolute strength, right? Where we perform an upper and lower with our absolute strength development. And then 2 of those days are gonna focus on the hypertrophy stimulus, upper and lower. So we balance those 4 days out. So next is how we actually combine those modalities and how those work congruently to be able to develop mass in athletes while keeping them athletic and strong. Now, German volume training, to give you a little bit of context, is essentially developed by an Olympic weightlifting coach who needed his athletes to be able to jump a weight class, but doing it efficiently so they can still perform. And essentially what he did was he supersetted 2 compound movements where he would perform high volume at a moderate intensity. What he did was basically 10 sets of 10 at 60%, and there's a way to progress it from there to 10 sets of 8, 10 sets of 6. And essentially what that volume does is as the athlete gets later into their later rounds or their later sets, 6, 7, 8, 9 sets of that movement at a moderate weight, the muscle fibers fatigue and they have to call upon more motor units, more muscle fibers, which creates more damage to those muscle fibers that they didn't call upon, and essentially that elicits the response for that athlete to grow. The other side of that is 5-3-1, which was developed by Jim Wendler, who was a famous power lifter, also a coach, where this is a simple progressive overload to strength, where essentially week 1 you perform sets of 5, then you perform sets of 3, and then you perform sets of 1 with a specific percentage. But if you look as you continue to drop those repetitions, the intensity essentially increases, right? So let's say you're performing sets of 4 repetitions. I go 4-3-2 because I don't max out with our athletes. We perform a technical 2. But let's say we were performing 4 repetitions at 85%. The last set of that, you're going to perform that 85%, you're gonna perform as many reps as you can of that particular movement. Now, the reason why this works out so well is because what happens is as athletes enter the off season, they usually make rapid adaptations. They're not training at the same intensity as they were in season. So to be able to keep up with those adaptations, right, and make sure we regulate on a week-to-week basis and continue to meet that athlete's demands, we essentially use that Wendler 5-3-1 tactic to determine the athlete's new 1 rep max. So let's say that the athlete was to perform those 4 sets of 4 reps at 85%. Well, let's say that last set they performed 10 reps, which I commonly see with my athletes. They essentially are getting stronger, they're adapting on a weekly basis. Well, now we put that into our 1 rep max calculator, configure that out, and then we can determine their new 1 rep max. So that's why I say GVT feeds 531 and 531 feeds GVT. As you develop your new 1 rep max, you then take that 1 rep max and use that same percentage in your German volume training. So you're escalating that response and eliciting a more intense response with the hypertrophy. And then as the athlete performs that movement for high volume, they in return get better at that movement, sync it up, and they get adaptations to their nervous system and the muscle tissue, which makes them stronger. So GVT through volume feeds 531, and 531 through the intensity of the absolute strength feeds the German volume training, and that continues to be able to push that demand and elicit a great response and a great adaptation from the athletes at the end of the off season. So I know that got a little bit complex, but I wanted to make sure that I can show you how combining those modalities is what really is the best method, or what I've seen to be one of the most efficient methods in being able to develop mass in athletes. I hope that helps, guys. If you want to see a full program of how all of this is put together down to the reps and sets, you can check out my newest program, Athletic Mass, down below, and I'll holler at you guys next time.